On the 24th of March, 2025, in a bankruptcy courtroom, lawyers for a Silicon Valley company stood up and said something almost nobody expected. The company's most valuable asset was not a laboratory or a patent or a drug in development. It was a database. 15 million tubes of spit, mailed in over nearly 2 decades, sitting on a server, about to be sold to the highest bidder. The company was 23andMe. 4 years earlier, it had been worth $6 billion, backed by Google's own co-founder, celebrated on magazine covers as the future of medicine. Now, its stock traded for pennies. Its own founder had just resigned as chief executive, and the genetic code of 15 million strangers, information about their ancestry, their health risks, their own children, was being fought over in a courtroom by a pharmaceutical giant and a non-profit the founder had built in secret, specifically so she could try to buy her own company back. By the end of this video, you will see exactly why a company that seemed to have everything, the technology, the hype, the celebrity investors, could not survive one simple mathematical problem baked into its own product. A problem it saw coming. A problem it spent 9 years and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to engineer its way around, and failed. The idea started in a marriage. In 2006, Linda Avey and Wojcicki founded 23andMe in Mountain View, California. Wojcicki was married at the time to Sergey Brin, one of Google's 2 co-founders, and when the company raised its first real money the following year, Google was in the round, with personal capital from Brin himself alongside it. The pitch was simple and, for 2007, radical. Spit in a tube, mail it in, and for a few $100s, find out where your ancestors came from and what your own DNA said about your health. A year later, Time magazine called it the invention of the year. Nobody in the room was thinking about what happened after the tube arrived in the mail. For years, 23andMe grew by selling something nobody else could, a direct answer, mailed straight to your door, about the code inside your own cells. But growth collided with regulation almost immediately. In November 2013, the Food and Drug Administration sent Wojcicki a warning letter, ordering the company to immediately stop marketing its health risk reports until it could prove the science held up. For nearly 2 years, 23andMe in the United States was legally allowed to sell customers exactly one thing: where their ancestors came from. It survived. In October 2015, the FDA cleared the company to sell limited health reports again, and 23andMe did something almost no competitor could. It turned regulatory approval into a scientific asset. By 2018, it had built a database large enough that a major pharmaceutical company wanted in. GlaxoSmithKline paid $300 million for an equity stake and a 4-year exclusive deal to mine that genetic data for new drug targets. And Alliance GSK later paid another $50 million to extend. The company kept building on top of the same idea. In 2020, it launched a paid subscription tier, 23andMe Plus, promising deeper reports for a recurring fee. In 2021, it spent $400 million acquiring a telehealth company, Lemonade Health, to connect a genetic test to an actual doctor, an actual prescription, an ongoing relationship. That same year, 23andMe went public through a deal with Richard Branson's investment vehicle, valuing it at $3.5 billion. On its first day of trading, the stock jumped as much as 35%. Within weeks, the market had pushed 23andMe's value past $6 billion. On paper, the arc looked complete. A garage genetics company had survived a federal shutdown, signed a pharmaceutical giant, and gone public at a $6 billion valuation, all inside 15 years. But underneath the subscription tier, underneath the telehealth acquisition, underneath the drug discovery alliance, one number was already going in the wrong direction, and almost nobody outside the company's own finance team could see it yet. Here is the number. A DNA test, once taken, does not need to be taken again. Your ancestry does not change. Your genome does not update. The single most common piece of advice 23andMe gave its own customers, embedded right there on the box, was also the sentence that would eventually kill the company. You only need to do this once. Every other subscription business investors compare a public tech company to sell something you come back for. A streaming show ends and you want another one. A pair of shoes wears out. A DNA test does not wear out. It does not expire. Once a customer has their results, the company's core product has nothing left to sell that customer ever again. 23andMe's own leadership understood this earlier than the outside world gave them credit for. The 2020 subscription launch and the 2021 Lemonade acquisition were not side projects. They were an attempt to build an entirely new, recurring business on top of a one-time purchase before the supply of first-time buyers ran out. If a customer would only ever buy the spit kit once, the company needed to sell that same customer something else, forever, afterward. It was the correct diagnosis. The pivot to fix it would turn out to be nowhere near enough. Converting a one-time customer into a repeat, paying subscriber sounds simple in a boardroom slide. In practice, almost none of them followed through. A customer who has already learned their ancestry and their health risks has little reason to keep paying a monthly fee for slightly deeper reports on data that will never meaningfully change. The subscription conversion rate stayed a small fraction of the customer base, nowhere near enough to replace the revenue from new kit sales. Lemonade Health had the same problem in a different shape. Buying a telehealth company for $400 million was supposed to turn a spit kit customer into an ongoing patient, someone who came back for prescriptions and doctor visits built around their genetic profile. But a genetic test and a telehealth subscription are two different purchasing decisions, made for two different reasons, and bundling them under one brand did not automatically bundle the customer's habits. Most people who bought a DNA kit never became a Lemonade patient at all. Meanwhile, the pool of new customers, the people who had never taken a DNA test and might want to, was not infinite. By the early 2020s, millions of the most curious, most willing early adopters in the United States had already bought a kit from 23andMe or a competitor. Growth in new customers began to slow at the exact moment the company most needed it to accelerate, to fund the subscription business, the telehealth business, and the drug discovery business, all trying to grow out of the same shrinking base of first-time buyers. This is the part almost every other retelling of this story skips past on its way to the data breach headlines. So stay with me, because it is the actual reason everything that happens next becomes almost impossible to stop. The company was not failing because of one scandal. It was failing because its core product, the very thing 15 million people trusted it with, could only ever be sold to each of them exactly once. With revenue growth stalling, the wave hit in October 2023. Hackers had not broken into 23andMe's own servers directly. Instead, they used passwords stolen from breaches at completely unrelated websites and tried them against 23andMe accounts, a technique called credential stuffing. It worked on roughly 14,000 accounts. But 23andMe had a feature called DNA Relatives, designed to connect customers to genetic family members on the platform. And through those 14,000 compromised accounts, the attackers were able to scrape data connected to millions more people who had never done anything wrong at all. In the end, personal information belonging to about 6.9 million users, ancestry results, health predisposition data, family connections, was exposed. The breach landed on a company that no longer had the financial cushion to absorb it. Lawsuits followed. Trust, the one asset a genetic database company cannot function without, cracked in public. A year later, in 2024, 23andMe shut down its therapeutics division entirely. The drug discovery arm that had once justified a $300 million investment from GSK and cut roughly 40% of its workforce, more than 200 people, in a single restructuring meant to save $35 million a year. The subscription tier had not saved the company. The telehealth acquisition had not saved the company. Now the drug discovery bet, the most ambitious attempt yet to turn a one-time genetic test into a long-term, recurring healthcare relationship, was gone too. Every fix had been tried. None of them had replaced what a one-time purchase business fundamentally could not generate on its own. By 2024, Wojcicki had a plan of her own. In April, regulatory filings revealed she wanted to take 23andMe private, off the public markets entirely. In the months that followed, she offered 40 cents a share for the company she had co-founded 18 years earlier. The board's independent committee rejected it as insufficient. Then, on September the 17th, 2024, all 7 independent directors on 23andMe's board resigned on the same day. In their letter, they said Wojcicki had never delivered a fully financed, fully diligenced offer in the interest of outside shareholders. By that afternoon, Wojcicki was the only person left on the board of a public company that still held the genetic data of 15 million people. 2 more rounds of layoffs and the end of the company's cancer research program followed within weeks. Then, on March 24, 2025, 23andMe filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Wojcicki resigned as chief executive that same day, a resignation with a specific legal purpose. As an outside bidder, rather than the sitting CEO, she would be free to compete to buy her own company's remains. The bankruptcy auction that followed was the scene this video opened with. In May 2025, pharmaceutical company Regeneron won the first round with a $256 million bid for nearly all of 23andMe's assets. Wojcicki was not finished. Through a newly formed nonprofit called TTAM Research Institute, she came back with $305 million, reopened the auction, and won it. The deal, covering the genetic testing business, the research database, and Lemonade Health, closed in July 2025. The company Wojcicki started in a marriage to a Google co-founder, took public at a $6 billion valuation, and watched collapse into bankruptcy. She bought back herself for less money than she alone had spent on the Lemonade acquisition 4 years earlier. Here is the strange twist buried inside this story. The very thing that made 23andMe's business model so fragile, a product each customer only ever needed once, is also the reason its data outlived the company that collected it. 15 million genomes do not expire, do not need replacing, and do not lose their value just because the business selling them went bankrupt. The database was the one part of 23andMe that never had a repeat customer problem because it was never asked to be a customer at all. That database is what Regeneron wanted for drug research. It is what Wojcicki's nonprofit ultimately paid $305 million to secure. And as of mid-2026, under the new nonprofit structure, the company reports holding data from roughly 13 million users with a stated ambition to reach 100 million. It is not a clean ending. California's Attorney General has sued the company's post-bankruptcy legal entity over how it protected customer data during the 2023 breach. And several states have raised objections over whether users' genetic information should have required fresh, opt-in consent before changing hands in a bankruptcy sale at all. Those cases are still working through the courts. The company failed. The idea and the data it collected did not. There is a version of this story where 23andMe is simply a cautionary tale about data privacy or about a founder who could not let go. Both of those things are true. But the deeper lesson sits earlier, in the spreadsheet, not the scandal. A business built to sell something people only need once is not automatically a bad business. It can still be a great product, a genuine scientific achievement, a company millions of people trust enough to mail their own DNA to a stranger. What it cannot be, without an entirely separate, genuinely sticky reason for customers to come back, is a growth company that keeps climbing forever. 23andMe tried 3 different ways to manufacture that second reason. A subscription tier, a telehealth acquisition, a drug discovery arm. Each one was a real attempt to solve a real, correctly identified problem. None of them arrived fast enough or worked well enough to outrun a simple fact the company had known from the very beginning. You only need to spit in the tube once. If you have ever taken one of these tests yourself, or if you are wondering right now what actually happens to that data next, that is worth its own conversation in the comments below. This channel covers the companies that built something the world wanted and still lost it. If that is the kind of story you want to keep seeing, the subscribe button is right there, and there is another one of these waiting for you next.